Hello and welcome to the Software Engineering Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michaela, and today I have the pleasure to talk to Micha Hernandez van Leuffen. He is the founder and CEO of Fiberplane. He previously was the founder of Wercker, a container-native CI/CD platform that was acquired by Oracle. Micha has dedicated his career to improving the workflow of developers. So he and I have a lot to talk today. I'm really happy that he is here today, and he's also sponsoring today's episode. Welcome to the show. I'm happy that you're here, Micha.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So, Micha, I wanted to start really from the beginning. So you are the CEO of Fiberplane and you are the founder of Wercker, which, already sold. So can you tell me a little bit how you actually started to this entrepreneurial journey of yours and, what brought you to the developer experience area and field?
Yeah, sure thing. So I have a background in computer science, and I did my, so I'm originally from Amsterdam, but I did my thesis at USF, and the topic was autonomous resource provisioning using software containers. This was all before Docker was a thing, the container format that we now know and love. And I sort of got excited by that field of software containers and decided to start a company around it. That company was Wercker, so a container native CI/CD platform. So we helped developers build, test, and deploy their applications to the cloud. We went through various iterations of the platform. Eventually, we started off with LXC as a container format, and then eventually ended up, having to platform on Docker and Kubernetes. But it was quite a journey. So that company eventually got acquired by Oracle to bolster their cloud native strategy. And then spent a couple of years in the Bay Area as a VP of software development, focusing on their cloud native efforts. Tried to do a little bit of open source there as well. And then moved back to Europe and sort of started thinking about what's next. Did some angel investing. We're still doing some angel investing as well, actually in the sort of same arena, so developer tools, infrastructure, building blocks for tomorrow. So I run a small pre-seed seed fund with two other friends of mine. But then also started thinking about what to build next. And we can get into that, but sort of from our experience at running Wercker, this sort of large distributed system, sort of Fiberplane was born.
Cool, yeah. And so how was the acquisition for you? From the time you said you were studying at the university, but then did you right out of university, start Wercker, or maybe already while you were
more
studying?
Yeah, more or less just out of university. So it was around 2012, 2013. And then, expanded the team, of course. We got an office in San Francisco and London. And then in 2017, we got acquired by Oracle.
Oh, very cool. Wow. Cool. So, and you were the founder of that, and also probably CTO, CEO at the beginning. You were one person shop, or was this, I have this idea and I get some funding and I already, have a team when I'm starting out, or was it more a bootstrapped way? How was that?
We both Fiberplane and Wercker, we got some funding early on. Then eventually got a CTO for Wercker, who was one of the co-founders of OpenStack. So also, very early in that sort of container and cloud infrastructure journey. And then for Fiberplane, there's no CTO. I'm both CEO and CTO, I guess, at the same time.
Cool. Can you tell me a little bit about Fiberplane? What is Fiberplane? What does it has to do with containers and with developer experience? What kind of a product is it?
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess coming back to the Wercker days, right? So we we're running this distributed system, CI/CD. So we're also running users arbitrary code. Any sort of job could happen on the platform, on top of Kubernetes, inside of containers. So one of the things that stuck with me was it was very hard to always sort of debug the system, like figure out what's really going on when we had some kind of issue. We're going back and forth between metrics, logs, traces, trying to figure out what is the root cause of an issue. So sort of that was sort of one thing. So we're thinking a lot about, surely there must be a better way to help you on this journey. The other thing that I started thinking about a lot was sort of just challenge the assumption of the dashboard. So if you think about it, like a lot of the monitoring and observability tools are modeled after the dashboard, like sort of cockpit-like view of your infrastructure. But I'd say that those are great for the known knowns. So that a dashboard is great. You set it up in advance. You know exactly what's going to go wrong. These are the things to monitor. These are the things to keep tabs on. But then reality hits, and the thing that you're looking at the dashboard is not necessarily the thing that's going wrong, right? So started thinking a lot about what is a better form factor to support that sort of more investigative, explorative debugging of your infrastructure. And not to say that dashboards don't have their place, right? It's like still that sort of cockpit view of your infrastructure. I think that's a good thing to have. But for debugging, you might want a sort of more explorative form factor that also gives you actionable intelligence, right? I think the other thing that you see a lot with dashboards, like everybody's monitoring everything, and now you get a lot of signal and a lot of inputs, but not necessarily the actionable intelligence to figure out what's going on. So that's sort of the other piece to it. Then the third leg, I would say, is collaboration. So the thing that stuck with me was also like we've come to enjoy tools like Notion, Google Docs, obviously. In the design space, we got Figma, where collaboration is built in from the get-go. And I just found that it was kind of odd how in the developer tools and then sort of specifically DevOps, we don't really have sort of these collaboration not really built in, right? If you think about it. The status quo of you and I debugging an issue is we get on a Zoom, you share your screen, you open some dashboard, and we started talking over it or something, right? And so it's I guess sort of COVID accelerated this thinking a bit, but with everybody going remote, how can you make that experience more collaborative?
So it's in the incident space, it's in the monitoring space, and you want to bring more collaboration. So how does it work?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your solution?
So now I've explained sort of the inception story. But what is it, right? So it's a notebook form factor. So very much inspired by data science, right? Like RStudio,
Jupyter.
You can
Jupyter notebooks.
Think of that form factor. We don't use Jupyter or anything like that. So we've written everything from scratch. But it's a sort of a notebook form factor, and built in with collaboration. So you can mention people like you would on Slack. You can leave comments or discussions and all that. But where it gets interesting, we've got these things called providers, which are effectively plugins. So they're WebAssembly bundles, which we can sort of dive into that as well. But they're providers that connect to your infrastructure, right? So we have, for instance, a provider for Elasticsearch for your logs. We have a provider for Prometheus for your metrics, and it allows you to connect to these observability systems and kind of pull them together into one form factor, the notebook, and then start collaborating around that. So imagine if Notion and Datadog would have a baby. It's kind of what you get.
Yeah, that's cool. So I can imagine that, let's say I'm on call, and hopefully I'm not alone on call. You are also on call, right?
Yeah.
And so we would open a Fiberplane notebook.
Hopefully we're in the same time zone and we don't need to wake up in the middle of that. Yeah.
Hopefully, yes. And then we want to understand how the system is behaving. And so we are pulling in observers. These are data sources, more or less, right? And then we can do some transformation with those data sources, or
exactly. That might be the case. The other thing that we integrate with is, for instance, PagerDuty. So an alert goes off. Indeed, we're on call, but an alert goes off, and we have this PagerDuty integration, and subsequently a notebook is created for us already. Maybe even with some charts and logs that are already related to the service that might be down.
Okay.
So depending on the alert, obviously you're as good as how you've instrumented your alerts. But say we've written some good alerts, we now have a notebook ready to go, based off a template. So that's another thing that we have as well, which is this template mechanism. And now we're ready to go in and get into things and start debugging. So we might have a checklist. You look at the metrics, I'll look at the logs, sort of this action plan. We pull in that data. We start a discussion around it. And hopefully we come to the root cause of our issue.
Okay. And so this discussion and this pulling in data, this happens all in the notebook. Can you explain me a little bit more, and also our listeners, exactly when we are on this, on this call now, having a Fiberplane notebook in front of us, what do we see, right? How does the tool look like?
It's very similar to, I would say, like a Notion page or a Google Doc page. So we've got like different headings. The other thing that we have is, so you might have a title for a notebook, right? The billing API is down. The other thing that we have is sort of this time range. So maybe usually when there's an issue, we've seen this behavior over the last 3 hours. So we can sort of have that time range locked into place. So we only want to see our data for the last 3 hours. And that means that any chart that we plot or any log that we pull in will adhere to that global time frame. So that's what we see. We have support for labels. So, obviously big fans of Kubernetes and Prometheus. So labels are a first-class primitive on the platform. So you're able to sort of populate the notebook with the labels that might be related to our service, right? So it's a US East 1, which is our region. It might say service is the billing. It might be say environment is production. And the status of our incident is ongoing, stuff like that. So we've got. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. And so is it then from top to bottom, we are writing and we are investigating and we are writing down the questions that we have and the investigation that we do?
Yeah.
And
yeah. So we might have.
Is it a log of our work?
Yeah, it's sort of exactly. And I think in the most ideal use case, right? Most ideal scenario, you're kind of like writing your post-mortem as you go along.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, exactly that, right? And then maybe next time I'm on call again and I get PagerDuty and something is down, it's again billing. Can I search in the Fiberplane notebooks to find, what we did last time? And then
exactly.
Maybe
so you'll search
jump to the conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully, if you experience the same issue multiple times, at some point we'll do a little commit on GitHub and we fix our
do something.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, indeed. So you can search.
Cool.
On the notebooks and see if you've ran into similar issues. So that's it's great for building up this system of record, right? This knowledge base of infrastructure issues and incidents. And it's also great for onboarding, right? If a new person joins, like this is our process. These are some of the examples that we've run into. Have a look, and now you've got a sense for how we handle things and some of the issues that we've investigated.
Yeah, cool.
One more thing on the product. So sort of explained the notebook form factor. We've got these providers, right, that pull in data from different data sources like Elasticsearch or Prometheus. The other thing that we have is a command line interface, which is called FP. And apart from being able to create notebooks from your terminal and even invite people from your terminal, all the sort of usual stuff that you would expect from interacting with an API with a product like this, there's two other things that we do. So one is a command called FP run, and it allows you to, if you are typing a command like kubectl logs for a specific pod, you can pipe the output of that command to a notebook. And why that is useful is, of course, when we're debugging this issue, you and I, and you're start typing things in your terminal, I have no idea what you just did. And this is a way sort of to capture that. So you're piping these outputs from the stuff that you're typing into your terminal into the notebook. And the cool thing is, on your laptop, you just, sort of see text, right? Monospace output. But for certain outputs, such as the kubectl logs command, we actually know the structure of the data, and we're actually capable of formatting that in the notebook in a structured manner that you can start filtering on the logs and select certain columns and sort of highlight even certain log lines for prosperity that you say, hey, these are the culprits, these are the things that you need to take into consideration next time. So we have this sort of command line interface companion. And the other thing that it does, you're actually capable of running a long, like sort of same use case as I just mentioned, but like a long running recording. Like you actually record your entire shell session as you're debugging this thing, and all the output gets piped into the notebook.
Cool. And so I have two questions for Fiberplane. One is the software engineer the right person to interact with, Fiberplane, or is it the site reliability engineer that's really designed, or the tool is designed for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I think site reliability engineers you kind of see in more larger organizations, right, where you start sort of splitting up your teams. I will say, I think at the end of the day, right, is if you're an engineer, you've built the service, now you need to maintain it, now you need to operate it. Like it's your baby, right? You probably know best how that system behaves than anybody else. So indeed, I would say that the target group is developers.
And so the other question that I had around Fiberplane is also, when we are on this call and we're writing in this notebook, how does the whole scenario look like? Are we still on a call? Like, do we have Zoom or Google Meet open, or are we really in the Fiberplane document just writing, or are we sitting next to each other? What's the traditional? Is there a traditional scenario, or is this all possible with Fiberplane? How would you recommend using it?
Yeah. Another great question, right? I think back in the day, it would be that we maybe sit in the same office and I scoot over and we start looking at a screen, right, and start typing together. The reality is, of course, we're all doing remote work now, and we might not be in the same room. So I do think people will still use a Zoom call or a Google Meet, as a companion to talk over stuff. I think people will still communicate in Slack and sort of start chatting back and forth. But I think what we hope to achieve with Fiberplane is like the pasting of screenshots, right? Well, if you take a screenshot of some kind of chart in your dashboard and you put it in Slack, and somebody yells, "Oh, that's not the thing that you should be looking at." You should like all that sort of Slack glue. That it's our goal to do away with that.
Yeah, and the Slack glue is also very problematic for the search. At least I'm never able to find it again, right? It's in the dark,
it's super,
in the dark area.
It's super ephemeral. You can't go back in time easily, and how did we solve this last time? So again, like building up that system of record, I think.
Very cool. And so, how long are you now working on Fiberplane already?
So we've been working on it for about 2 years now, which is a long time. I think as a sort of one of the things that we've sort of discovered along the way, that we're kind of like building two startups at the same time, right? We're doing Notion, or like a collaborative rich text editing experience, which is kind of like a startup on its own. And we're building sort of this infrastructure product. So it's taken quite some time and energy to get the product to where it is now.
Yeah. And do you have already users? Is it like people that listen today, can they hop on Fiberplane already, or?
It's been in private beta, but I think by the time this gets aired, it will be in public beta, and people can sign up and take it for a spin. And we would love to get feedback on our roadmap, right? And people can suggest what other types of providers we need to support, what other types of integrations. We would love to have that conversation.
Cool. Yeah. So is there there is the provider side. Is there something else that you want feedback on that you are exploring maybe?
Yeah. So we've got the providers. That's one thing. We've got sort of our templating stack.
Mm-hmm.
So curious to sort of see how people sort of start codifying their knowledge, right? What kind of processes people have to debug their infrastructure and sort of run their incidents or write their postmortems. So curious to see what people come up with there. Um, Other types of integrations, right? So we have, as I said, sort of PagerDuty. What other type of sort of alert to notebook or other types of external systems that we need to plug in with? I would love to get some feedback on that as well.
Yeah, I think I had Paige Bailey over on the podcast. She's from GitHub, and she was also they were releasing something with Copilot, and for data scientists some spaces here. And she also said like, well, we really need input from the users, right? So try it out, tell us how it's working. I think it's so valuable, right? To see not only like you have your vision, and obviously it's going one way, but then if you have your users, sometimes they take your product and they use it in a very different way than you anticipated, which
Yeah,
can be very
exactly.
informative, right? I don't know, you have done 2 startups already. Have you seen that, and how do you react to it? Do you instrument the data a little bit? How do you realize that people are using your product in a different way?
Yeah, so obviously we have metrics and analytics on sort of usage patterns of the product, but I think that data is excellent, right? But also qualitative data is,
Mm-hmm.
especially at this stage, is probably even better, right? Where you can get somebody on a call and tell us about your use case, tell us about the problem that you're trying to solve here, and how can we
Yeah.
be helpful, and like what types of integrations should we support? I think sort of the difference between Wercker, I would say, and Fiberplane is that Wercker was pretty confined piece of surface area, right? CI/CD. The whole goal is to either have a green check mark next to your build or a red check mark next to your build,
Mm-hmm.
like it either failed or passed. And we need to sort of do that fast for you, get that result quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with Fiberplane, it's a more I think the interesting thing here is like it's a more explorative and a sort of rich design space, right? It's this notebook which already you can start typing and add text and images and headings and checklists and whatnot, right? It's a very open form factor and design space, and then of course with the integrations, it can even be richer. So I'm very curious into your point, right? Uh, what direction people will pull the product into, because you can take it into all sorts of use
Yeah.
cases and scenarios. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think as a founder also, or as the design team, product team, it's also a little bit of a balancing act, right? So how far, are we going with what the user are doing with our product, and where are we setting some boundaries that they can't do everything, right? So there's also often the talk about opinionated products, right? That you can actually only
Yeah.
do one thing and on one thing only, and we have an opinion on, how you are supposed to use our product. And, we try to, if we see people deviate from that, we try to put an end to it. And
Yeah.
then there's the other way where you say, well, if you take Fiberplane and you do X with it, and we haven't thought about this, maybe
Yeah.
we are okay with it, or maybe we even support that path, right?
Yeah, I think we're more on indeed on the latter, right? I think what we've and sort of we talk about this a lot internally. Sort of everything is a building block. We've got the notebook, you've got these different cell types, you've got providers, you've got templates,
Mm-hmm.
you've got the command line interface. So like for us, like everything is a building block, and we actually want to retain that flexibility and not be too prescriptive, because maybe you have if you think about sort of the incident debugging or investigating your infrastructure, like you might have a certain process, I might have a completely different process, and we need to be able to facilitate these different workflows. So yeah, thus far, sort of our thinking around the product has been everything is a building block, and it should be this sort of flexible form factor that people can pull into different
Yeah.
scenarios and use cases.
I mean, we have infrastructure as code, right? And we have like
Yeah.
security as code. Maybe we have debugging as code. Maybe this is what's coming next. Can
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can
and
you
there's
envision that it's going in this direction? Because, well, we have building blocks. Maybe right now it's not uh, a programming language for debugging, but it could go a
Yeah.
little bit into this direction, right? No code coding
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
debugging somehow.
Yeah, we've had some of that sort of discussion internally as well. If you think about the templates, right, to some extent, that is we use JSON as a sort of language, but we sort of codified them in a certain way, and you could argue that the templates is sort of a programming language for at least that debugging process, right?
Yeah, exactly,
And
right. Yeah.
you can take that even further and make it, I don't know, like statically typed and make it adhere to certain rules and maybe even have control flow. So I think that there's a piece there, and then maybe obviously we have some YAML configuration and how you set up your providers, right? Like how they connect to your infrastructure. So there's some observability as code in that realm. But I think that'll be an interesting part of the journey, right? Like to figure out, can we
And some
codify
parts,
this even more?
yeah, and some parts should be, well, don't repeat yourself, right? Like, for example, pulling in these
Yeah,
providers, configuring that, I get the right data. This should actually be something that I'm, pulling in again. And probably that's what your templates do, right? So you say billing, oh, and then check. I have, all
yeah,
my signals here and they're configured in a way that it's useful. And then for this investigation, hopefully it's a one at a time thing, right? So I'm investigating, and as we talked before, once I realized what's going on, hopefully in my postmortem, I'm going to, make sure that this is not happening again. So this code probably is not going to be reused that often. Maybe
yeah,
some,
exactly. Yeah,
some ideas from it, but hopefully we won't
yeah,
reproduce the same exact, completely exact
yeah.
thing again. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's a super great point. And I think coming back sort of the earlier part of the conversation around dashboards, right? I think thus far
Mm-hmm.
what we've sort of experienced as engineers ourselves, like I think we probably had a sort of a phase around information gathering. Like all these dashboards are great for information gathering, but now with Kubernetes and containers and microservices, like the number of services that we're running and the complexity has increased. So I think there's sort of an opportunity for more, and exactly what you're describing is more about action, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? We want to have the information. We want actionable intelligence that informs us what to do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because now I'm looking at these dashboards and I'm seeing the signals, but then everything else is outside of this
Yeah,
realm, right? So what actions do I
exactly.
take? Do I go to the console? Do I restart that service? Or whatever I'm doing, and it's also vanishing, right? So I'm doing it, but then
Yeah,
who can
it's gone.
see it? What I did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And so now we are capturing this, which is very nice, and then we can learn from it, right? Postmortems as well.
yeah,
So I looked a little bit through your blog and your Twitter, and you were also talking about blameless postmortem. So how do you think about psychological safety? How should people in an organization look at on-call and incident management to really make it sure that we are ending the blame game, right? You probably have some thoughts about that as well because you're working in this area.
yeah. I think it's important to indeed like not have put any blame on any person, right? It is I guess sort of that's also why we're building this product. It is a collaborative process to debug an issue or resolve an incident. Like, and what you want to achieve is to put the entire team in the best possible position to solve the issue at hand, and a support structure around it. So coming back to the product, like being able to open discussions and point people in the right direction.
So maybe also if it's easier to find the problem, to root cause it, and incidents become a no issue or at least a lesser issue. So maybe the blame game is not that important. Can we say it that way?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If the process becomes repeatable, and we codify that, and we collaborate on it, and we build up that system of record and knowledge base, I think puts us in a safer position to solve the next one.
That's true. Yeah. Another thing that I was thinking of when I looked through, Fiberplane and what it does is chaos engineering. And I thought chaos engineering is where you try to prevent not only the knowns, but also the unknowns, right? So really think about, what could go wrong and then, make a fallback so that your system is reliable. Or, if this database goes down, that not the whole system goes down, but only a part of it and so on. Do you think that chaos engineers can actually source or use those notebooks that you're creating as input for knowing what we should actually look at? And
well, one thing, I think it'd be a great provider,
like
integrating with one or many of the chaos engineering services out there. I think it's a great way to train your team, right? We plug in some chaos engineering provider. The provider communicates with your infrastructure and such, pulling out wires from your system, and then now go ahead and start debugging this issue and use different templates, and you can sort of trial all sorts of different issues. I think it'd be super fun.
Yeah. So Micha, one thing that I also saw is that some of your of Fiberplane is open source. So what's your vision for open sourcing that? Are some parts being open source? Can people help with building Fiberplane?
Yeah, great question. So right now, what we've open sourced is a project called FP BindGen. So this is actually a sort of SDK, a bindings generator for how you would create full stack WebAssembly plugins. So this is what we use to build our own Elasticsearch and our Prometheus plugins. So we've open sourced that. It's on GitHub. We've already got quite some feedback on it. But would love some more. And then going forward, we'll be open sourcing sort of our templating stack, the proxy, which sort of which you install inside your cluster and sort of sets up the secure connections between the providers and your infrastructure, and then the Fiberplane managed service. And then the command line interface that I mentioned will also be open source. So expect more to hear from us on the open source front.
Yeah, cool. I think that's so important, especially for developer tooling, that people can also really get it into their hands and then help, shape or make the best product for their environments that they have. I think this is such a success strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And we, as I said, we would love to get feedback on the providers and the plugin model. But maybe even once we open source the provider stack, it would be great if people maybe come up with crazy ideas. Right? You can think of any type of provider that you could surface data inside of the notebook. It doesn't need to be observability or like monitoring data. Like, could be anything.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm super excited what what will come out of that.
Yeah.
So I want to come back a little bit to your founding story, because I know a lot of people are interested in developer tools and startup founding as well. And you did it twice already, right? And maybe several more times in your life. I don't know, but right now we know of two instances. So. And also for Fiberplane, you already got funding, right? Several $1 million. So how do you do that? How do you do it out of Europe is also some of my questions that I have, because I think it's a little bit a different game here in Europe than it's in Silicon Valley. It doesn't look like, opportunities around the corner everywhere. I have been studying in the Netherlands, so I know that actually the Netherlands is really a good place, I think, for tech startups, and also a little bit out of the universities. I saw there are like you get a little bit of help and funding and things like this, but still I would assume it's harder than in Silicon Valley. So how did you make it work? How did you get funding? You also said that Wercker had some funding at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a good question. How did we do the second time around? To be honest, because it's the second time, it was a bit easier. I mean, it's never, it's obviously, never as easy, but it was definitely easier. I do think in Europe, if I also compare it to the Wercker days, to where we are now, like I do think the funding climate and sort of the thinking around startups has improved a lot. right? There's more funding out there. There's more VCs. I think more importantly, though, what we've seen is that now sort of the European unicorns have exited or gone IPO, and we have actually more operators inside of Europe, right, that have experience in either founding a startup, are able to sort of start doing angel investing, or have worked at multiple startups, and we have just more operating experience, versus honestly like bankers, right? That help you out or are investing in you. So actually, the funds that funded us were Crane Venture Partners, which is actually a seed fund out of London that is actually focused on developer tools and infrastructure. So I would highly recommend talking to them if you're thinking about building a developer tool company, and you need some funding. Of course, my own fund is also focused on developers tool. So shameless plug there on NP Hard Ventures. You can just Google that and find me. And then we have North Zone, which is a very like multi-stage fund, also out of actually quite different geographies, and Notion Capital out of London as well.
Okay,
and then
so
we've got some
you have several
micro VCs,
several
like
things. Cool.
we have somebody from the West Coast, Alana Anderson, who's doing with Base Case Capital, investing in a lot of infrastructure and enterprise startups, and Max Clausen from System One in Berlin is another one. So yeah, we have a good crew of a different experience and sort of different stage type of funding as well.
Yeah, this was my next question that I had for you. It's probably not only about the money. You said experience, right? It's also about the knowledge that people have, right? How to do things. Probably the people that they know, right? So that they can introduce you to the right people, have the right network, and so on.
Yeah, I think the most it's introductions, but it's also if you think about the funds that actually do developer tools, right? So they in their portfolio they've seen startups trying over and over to tackle some kind of go-to-market issue, or trying to build an open source company, right? So they have some pattern matching and some knowledge about what to do and what not to do. Of course, it's all advice, but it's good to sort of have some people in your corner that have at least seen these types of companies being built over and over again, cool. Right? And then other VCs have more experience and more like how to build up or scale up a sales organization and thinking about how to run a SaaS company. So different experience from different funds.
And so now you listed quite a lot of different investors. Do you reach out to each one of them, or do you have like a whole group meeting and they're all in there and you ask them for advice? How does it work?
No, it's sort of one-on-one chats, right? Either over chat, or we meet up for coffee or breakfast. But we try to do that on a regular cadence. And then of course when something exciting happens, such as our launch, we try to group them together and get them all on the same page around the same time. Or of course, if an issue arises, right, which could also be the case. And then sort of all hands on deck and everybody in the same room or Zoom.
And what were your biggest struggle on your entrepreneurial journey? Maybe now with Fiberplane, or maybe with Wercker. Did you ever think that Wercker, when you started it, did you think that somebody is going to buy this and this is going to be huge?
I think the ambition was always there, and sort of that drive to just make better developer tools. I think that's that's been true for all the companies, or all it's true. I think that's.
And what were your biggest struggle?
So I think as I said, I think for Fiberplane now, it's not necessarily a struggle. It's just this mission of this flexible form factor, just the fact that we're doing sort of two startups at the same time has been sort of an interesting thing to build now, right? You're doing this collaborative rich text editor and trying to build this infrastructure oriented company. And I think that's been just an interesting experience with building out the team and the technology and the product that we're building.
Yeah. So maybe can you tell me a little bit more about, again, if people want to hop over to Fiberplane now
Yeah.
and try it out, how does that work? Do you have to, is there a sign up? Is there a waiting list? I mean, you said probably when this airs, there is a
Yeah.
public beta, but still, do you have to, what do you have to reach out to you? You give me a demo, or I just fill in my credentials and I'm off to go?
Yeah. You can just sign up with Google, and then you're off to the races. And then, of
Cool.
course, if you want a demo and sort of get some more help or onboarding, we're happy to help you and get on a call and walk you through it. But yeah,
Okay, cool. Is there
fiberplane.com.
also is there a video or something that we can look at?
Yes, the website, and there's a video.
Okay, I will link that so that people can go
Yeah,
and it will explain everything to them, right?
I
What
think so.
about
Yeah.
pricing? What about pricing? Do you have
Yeah,
already some
good
idea
question.
around pricing? Yeah.
We've got some ideas on how to charge, but I think right now for us, it's important to get the product market fit, and as such, get the feedback from these companies and these teams using the product. So we'll introduce pricing at a later stage. So for now, it's free to use, and you just give us your time and your feedback, and then
Yeah.
we're grateful.
Yeah. And what about my data? Is it safe with you? Like, do you have some visibility into my data, or do I
Yeah.
send
So
it over to you?
yeah. So we actually, so the way the providers work the plugins, so they actually get activated through a proxy. So you install a proxy inside of your cluster. The proxy sets up a secure bidirectional tunnel from your infrastructure to the Fiberplane managed service. And then we do, for that specific query, we do store the data that's related to that query. So the result, we do store that in the notebook. And we probably will come up with sort of more enterprisey ideas around
Yeah.
how to store that in
Self-hosted,
different
right?
ways,
Or something.
as an example. Yeah. But
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
we'd love to get some feedback on that.
Yeah, how that works, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, yeah, that sounds really good. I think you, at least my questions, you could answer them all, but maybe my listeners have questions and then they can send them to you. I think you will be
Yeah. So
quite happy,
I'm
right?
at 100%.
Yeah.
At Mies on Twitter, Mies, and at Fiberplane on Twitter,
Cool.
fiberplane.com. Sign up, take
Yeah.
it for a spin, shoot us a
Yeah, it sounds
message.
good. Yeah. It sounds super interesting. I hope that a lot of my listeners will do that, and I will link everything in my show notes that we, talked about, your Twitter handle and everything, so that people can reach you. And I hope you get a lot of questions and people give it a spin and give it a try and send you their use cases. And
Yeah.
I hope you all the best with your product. Thank you so much for being on my show today, Micha. And thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was really great. Bye.
Bye bye.
This was another episode of the Software Engineering Unlocked podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please help me spread the word about the podcast. Send the episode to a friend via email, Twitter, LinkedIn, well, whatever messaging system you use, or give it a positive review on your favorite podcasting platforms such as Spotify or iTunes. This would mean really a lot to me. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.